There are many people who believe that you don't need to get stronger to get bigger. In this video, I want to prove why that is 100% false. In fact, I would like to argue that anybody who trains for hypertrophy is actually a lot stronger than what they think. So let me break this down. First of all, what is a hypertrophy routine? Typically, it's a system that includes extremely high volume, lots of time detention, lots of squeezing, slow tempo, the whole deal like that. And the thing is this, right? There's a few things that prove to me that these lifters are actually strong. The first would have to be the technique that they use. You see, bodybuilders intentionally create moment arms so that they don't need to lift as heavy. And for those who don't know, a moment arm is basically this, right? Gravity operates in a straight vertical line. Anything that deviates away from that is horizontal force that you must overcome. Therefore, it is a moment arm. I'm going to put a picture on the screen so you guys can understand this a little bit better. Now, when you're doing strength training or you're training for powerlifting, you're trying to maximize your leverages by decreasing the amount of moment arms. The less moment arms you have, the more you can lift. But with bodybuilders, they intentionally create moment arms so that the number that they see does not actually feel this way. A great example would be on the tricep pushdown. Instead of having the elbows pinned close to their sides, they will have their elbows very far up in front of their body, which creates a moment arm. Therefore, you might see 70 pounds on the cable machine, but in reality, their muscles are doing a lot of the work. And in particular, this actually isolates the triceps a little bit more because when you have the rope so close to your body, you might use your shoulders and your chest to assist in the weight. So it's about leverages. A lot of bodybuilders intentionally give themselves bad leverages so that they're not lifting as heavy. But in reality, they're actually doing a lot of work on the muscle. Another example of leverages would be the sledgehammer. An example that further demonstrates my point is the sledgehammer. If you grab it close to the point at which you strike, it's not going to feel like anything. It's going to feel very, very light. However, if you grab it closer to the edge of the handle, all of a sudden, the weight starts feeling heavier. Although it's still 8 pounds, it's not a heavy sledgehammer, but when you grab it lower and lower, you're creating so many moment arms that the weight feels heavier. And see, that's what bodybuilders do. They make it harder, but in reality, their muscles are still doing a lot of the work. So I can assure you that if you made these people clean up their technique a little bit, make them work under a powerlifter, I think you would see tremendous differences in their strength. So that's point number one. Secondly, the slow tempo thing. When you use a slower tempo, the set will be extended for a much longer period of time. What could have taken you 30 seconds might take you 60 seconds. The result is that you experience a lot of fatigue, and fatigue leads to performance breakdown. You cannot lift as much when you are fatigued. On top of that, when you slow down that tempo, the stretch reflex is dissipated more and more. You see, plyometrics work, and plyometrics have a very high velocity. You're dropping down extremely fast, which allows you to come up extremely fast, right? If you take a basketball and you strike it fast on the floor, it's going to bounce up higher than if you were to just drop it at free falling speed. So this is what happens when you lower a weight quickly, which a lot of powerlifters tend to do, especially when you incorporate bands, which gives you an overspeed eccentric effect. The faster you lower a weight, the greater the stretch reflex. Therefore, you can lift more weight. Therefore, it is advantageous to all strength athletes to lift quickly. But for bodybuilders, if you're intentionally lowering the weight slowly, this will dissipate the stretch reflex, which makes you lift less weight. But you see, it's not that you're weak, it's just that you're using a slow tempo, which makes you weaker out of the bottom, which is the hardest part of many exercises such as the bench press. That said, if you were to increase the tempo of this exercise, whatever it may be, you'll find that the bodybuilder or person who trains for strength can lift a lot more, okay? And again, the fatigue aspect will not be in there. So he can typically lift a lot more if he just speeds up the tempo a little bit, etc. Another aspect of bodybuilding training would be the squeezing, right? The whole mind-muscle connection thing, squeezing the muscles. Listen, when you squeeze a muscle, you're doing isometrics. That's exactly what you're doing. And isometrics are very tiring on the body. So if you're doing a set of 12 on a pushdown, for example, and each repetition you squeeze for 2 to 3 seconds, your force production is being severely diminished. And anybody who doesn't believe me, try doing an arm wrestling match with somebody. Arm wrestling is 100% isometric strength. Yet at the end of a match, your forearms are completely cramped up, completely swollen, and you can't lift heavy after that point. Try this. Go arm wrestle your friend, do about 3 different matches with him, and then try doing a hammer curl. You'll be lucky to curl 20 pounds. So when these bodybuilders are squeezing their muscles, they're doing isometrics. They are doing squeezes that allow them to feel their muscles working, number one. And secondly, it diminishes their force. When you squeeze, you are weaker. That is a fact. If you squeeze your biceps really, really hard after each curl, if you squeeze your triceps after each push down, it's going to be a lot more difficult. If you squeeze your pecs at the top of every single press, your chest will become fatigued. You will not be able to produce as much force. Therefore, you will lift less weight. But you see, it's not that you are weak. It's just that you are squeezing, which diminishes your force, which increases your fatigue, which makes you weaker. But I can assure you that if you take out the squeezing, if you take out the slower tempo, if you take out the disadvantageous leverages, you will see tremendous weights being utilized. And then a final aspect would have to be the rest itself. A lot of bodybuilders are resting 30 seconds between their sets, which makes you more tired. And when you're tired, you can't lift as much weight. That's just common sense. If a powerlifter is resting 2 to 5 minutes between each set of his bench press, he will obviously be able to lift a lot more weight. Doesn't that make sense? Whereas if a guy is doing 30 seconds, he will be forced to use submaximal weight. Otherwise, he's going to be failing. Otherwise, he's going to be ego lifting. So the result is that he has to use low percentages relative to his 1 rep max. If he's used to doing 60-pound dumbbells on the shoulder press, he might have to use 35, 40-pound dumbbells while resting 30 seconds because 30 seconds is a very small rest interval. But you see, folks, if you increase the rest time just to a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, all of a sudden this person can lift a lot more. Because you know what the truth is? He had the strength the whole time. He was never weak, okay? It's just that he did all these things to intentionally lift less weight, which gave him similar results to a guy who lifts heavy. So what we have is the following situation. We have squeezing, which reduces your force production. It's isometrics. It makes you more tired. We have a slow tempo, which reduces the stretch reflex, which again increases fatigue, makes you more tired. We have excessively high volume, very, very high volume, which of course you can't lift super heavy when you're doing volume like that. We have very short rest intervals, which further increases fatigue, further increases performance breakdown. And then we have the moment arms that were intentionally created. And when you intentionally create moment arms, exercises are going to be more difficult. So these 5 features make you lift less weight. But you see, you're still getting stronger. And you probably are a strong guy, okay? So next time a guy tries to tell you that it doesn't matter, listen, if you're doing all those techniques, man, you must be a strong dude when you lift without those techniques. Let's just get real here, okay? If you lower the volume a little bit, you stop the squeezing, you make the tempo a little bit more quick, all that stuff, trust me, you're going to lift a lot more weight. And then one final facet that I'd like to discuss is the fact that most guys who train for strength, for size are never periodizing their training. They're just constantly in a volume phase. And as we all know, with optimal periodization, you always want to have the management of volume and intensity. If you just do volume work, that's like doing linear periodization and being stuck in month 1 or weeks 1 to 3. That's like never going into the low percentages. And you see, that's why a lot of these guys, if you make them do low reps initially, they're going to be weak. They're going to suck ass at low reps because they're so used to volume work. But you see, if you put these individuals on the strength training program, very short term, the neural gains are going to come in extremely fast. And now all that volume work that they did is going to allow them to peak correctly. And then another thing that you probably don't realize is that when you're doing all this volume, right, when you're training for all this size per se, your work capacity is being built like crazy. You are building big muscles. You are getting large amounts of work capacity. And that's ultimately going to build your foundation for when you lift heavy weights. So it's not that people who train for size are weak. It's just that they never use techniques that make them lift more weight. And they never embarked lower reps. They never did high percentages relative to the 1 rep max. And this can be easily fixed. It can be very, very fixed. Like just make them run a powerlifting program temporarily and the strength is going to shoot up. Make them run the West Side Barbell Conjugate System. Make them run Naturally Enhanced. Make them run a Bulgarian light cycle. Have them max out every single day. Put them at 90%. Make them do 90% on any exercise every single day for next month or so and see what happens to their strength gains. You'll see that the neural gains are going to come in extremely fast, and all of a sudden these guys who claim to be weak are actually strong. So these people aren't weak. They claim to be weak, but that's false. They're actually a lot stronger than you think. It's just that they're using so many techniques, and of course they never used lower reps, that it makes them appear weak. But everything that I discussed proves that they're not. And then one last point. I know I keep saying one last point, but this is my final point, is that even if you are going to use all these techniques with the slow tempo, the squeezing, all that stuff, you still have to improve your performance. You still have to improve your sets, your reps. You have to slow down the tempo a little bit more. You got to squeeze a little bit harder. You have to do something to make it more intense. Otherwise, you're not going to make progress whatsoever. So regardless if you're using techniques or not, progressive overload is still the number 1 driver of hypertrophy. Bottom line. So if you're doing a bunch of drop sets, if you're pre-exhausting your muscles, if you're doing all this stuff to make it more difficult, but you're lifting the same amount of weight, guess what? You got stronger. You increase your performance. So when I say that as a drug-free lifter, you must get stronger to get bigger, it does not mean that you need to have the best 1 rep max of all time. Absolutely not. It does not mean that you need to compete with powerlifters. It doesn't mean you have to run a powerlifting program. No. All it suggests is that you must increase your performance over time. Whether that be a repetition, a set, lowering the tempo a little bit more, whatever it may be, you must increase performance in the long term. If you increase performance, you will get bigger. So all these guys saying, oh, you don't have to be strong to get big. No, you're wrong. You're a lot stronger than you think. If you, like I said, if you run a Bulgarian program for 1 month, if you start doing the lower reps, you stop with all the tempo shit and all that, your strength is going to be very high. You'll be very surprised how strong a lot of these individuals are. Trust me, I've worked with some of these people in person. They may appear weak on the surface, but once you make them do things right, you put them on a properly written strength training program, they blow up in strength very, very fast. So that's all I want to talk about. Most of these guys are not weak. They just make themselves appear weak on the surface. And by the way, I'm referring to drug-free lifters here because obviously when you're on juice, you don't have to be as strong. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Give me your feedback down below, and we'll talk to all you guys next time.